Inside your cells right now, a complex hormonal dance is determining your energy levels for the next decade. The same foods you ate at 30 are triggering completely different metabolic responses at 45. Your glucose spikes are 42% larger, your inflammation markers are climbing, your body is storing fat in places it never did before. Most menopause nutrition advice ignores this reality. It treats your metabolism like it's static, unchanging, but the clinical data tells a different story. Today, we're distilling the research into your metabolic blueprint. 5 foods ranked by their impact on postmenopausal glucose response, inflammation, and hormonal signaling. Not generic superfoods, specific biological tools selected for how your cells process nutrients after 35. One of these foods works exponentially better when eaten at a specific time of day, and it's not when you think. We'll examine that timing data in just a moment. Let's look at the evidence. Your declining estrogen levels have created a gap in your cellular protection system. Polyphenols fill that gap. These plant compounds interact with your gut bacteria to produce metabolites that mimic estrogen's protective effects on your blood vessels and metabolic signaling. The research shows this isn't about antioxidants in some vague wellness sense. It's about precision metabolism. Let's start with berries. When you eat a cup of whole blueberries, the intact fiber matrix prevents the glucose spike that the same amount of blueberry juice causes. Identical sugar content, completely different metabolic outcome. The fiber structure slows digestion. It allows your gut bacteria time to extract those polyphenols and convert them into compounds that regulate your insulin response. When you strip that matrix by juicing or buying powders, you lose the metabolic benefit entirely. The Zoe research reveals something critical here. Individual variability matters. Some women see dramatic improvements in glycemic response from berry consumption. Others see moderate changes. This depends on your unique gut microbiome composition and how efficiently your bacteria metabolize these polyphenols. Now, dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, these aren't just vitamin delivery systems, they're magnesium carriers. A magnesium deficiency is directly linked to insulin resistance in postmenopausal women. Your cells need magnesium for hundreds of enzymatic reactions, including the ones that regulate how you process glucose. When magnesium levels drop, your insulin signaling becomes impaired. Your cells become resistant. Your blood sugar stays elevated longer after meals. 3.5 ounces of cooked spinach delivers 93 milligrams of magnesium. That's nearly 30% of your daily requirement. But here's what most people miss. You need to eat these greens cooked to hit meaningful magnesium targets. Raw spinach contains oxalates that can interfere with mineral absorption. The clinical evidence also shows magnesium supports better sleep and reduces stress markers. Both of these improve your metabolic flexibility. When you're chronically stressed or sleep deprived, your cortisol levels stay elevated. This drives insulin resistance and promotes visceral fat storage. Your action blueprint for polyphenols: 1 cup of whole berries daily, preferably in the morning. This leverages your circadian insulin sensitivity, which peaks in the early part of your day. Your cells are more responsive to insulin in the morning, so the glucose from those berries gets processed more efficiently. For greens, 2 cups cooked daily. Pair them with a fat source like olive oil or nuts. The fat enhances absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and slows gastric emptying, further blunting any glucose response. The common mistake to avoid: buying superfood powders that promise concentrated polyphenols. These products strip the food matrix. They remove the fiber structure that makes these compounds bioavailable and metabolically active. You're paying premium prices for a product that your body can't use effectively. The research is clear. Whole berries and cooked leafy greens consumed in their intact form provide the structural foundation your cells need to maintain metabolic flexibility as your hormones shift. These plant compounds set the foundation, but there's a specific type of fermented dairy that doesn't just provide calcium. It actually communicates with your hormones through what we call the gut hormone axis. I'll show you how that metabolic conversation works in the next section. Fatty fish and fermented dairy deliver what your changing metabolism needs most: structural protein to preserve muscle mass and omega-3 fatty acids to reduce the inflammatory response that's amplifying your glucose spikes. Let's look at salmon first. Clinical evidence shows omega-3s from fatty fish reduce the 42% larger postprandial glucose spike seen in postmenopausal women. This isn't about general inflammation reduction. It's about how these fats modulate your insulin signaling pathways at the cellular level. When you eat salmon, the omega-3s integrate into your cell membranes. They make those membranes more fluid, more responsive to insulin signal. Your cells can take up glucose more efficiently. Your pancreas doesn't have to pump out as much insulin to clear the same amount of sugar from your bloodstream. There's also the selenium connection. Fatty fish contains this trace mineral that supports thyroid function. Your thyroid hormone production declines with estrogen loss. This compounds the metabolic slowdown you're already experiencing. Selenium helps maintain thyroid efficiency, which directly impacts your resting metabolic rate. A 3-ounce serving of salmon delivers roughly 17 grams of protein. That's critical because estrogen no longer protects your muscle mass the way it did at 30. You're losing muscle at an accelerated rate. Protein intake becomes non-negotiable for maintaining metabolic flexibility. Now, Greek yogurt. This delivers a dual action that most single foods can't match. The protein preserves muscle mass. 1 cup contains nearly 20 grams, but the probiotics modulate what we call the gut hormone axis. Your gut bacteria produce metabolites that influence how your body processes hormones, including the small amounts of estrogen your adrenal glands still produce after menopause. When your gut microbiome is balanced, these bacteria help metabolize estrogen into less inflammatory forms. When it's disrupted, you get more inflammatory metabolites that worsen insulin resistance. The food matrix advantage here is crucial. Full-fat fermented dairy delivers fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K2. These vitamins regulate calcium metabolism and bone density. Your bones are losing density faster now that estrogen has declined. Vitamin K2 specifically directs calcium into your bones rather than your arteries. But here's a critical caveat. The Zoe data on bioindividuality reveals that for a specific group of women, full-fat dairy can actually backfire. These are what we call fat responders. They handle dietary fat poorly post-menopause. Their triglycerides spike dramatically after eating high-fat meals. These women need precision testing to determine their optimal fat intake. Not everyone processes full-fat dairy the same way. We'll cover how to identify if you're a fat responder before we conclude. Your action blueprint: 2 servings of fatty fish weekly. That's roughly 100 grams per serving. 1 cup of Greek yogurt daily. Pair the yogurt with berries for a synergistic effect. The polyphenols from berries enhance the probiotic activity in the yogurt. Here's the timing insight that changes everything. Protein at breakfast blunts the cortisol-driven glucose spike common in menopausal women. Your cortisol peaks in the morning. It triggers your liver to release stored glucose. When you add protein to that meal, you dampen that spike and set your metabolic tone for the entire day. The pitfall to avoid: low-fat dairy. When manufacturers remove the fat, they strip the matrix that allows vitamin D absorption. Vitamin D is fat-soluble. It needs dietary fat present to cross your intestinal barrier. Without it, you're undermining the bone health benefits you're trying to achieve. The clinical reality is this: your protein needs have increased while your calorie budget has decreased. Fatty fish and fermented dairy provide the most efficient way to meet those needs without excess calories. We've covered the fats and proteins, but there's one structural carbohydrate that most nutritionists get wrong for menopause. If you pair it strategically with what we just discussed, the metabolic effect doubles. Let me show you why. Lentils deliver 37% of your daily iron requirement in a single serving. This matters because iron deficiency compounds the fatigue you're already experiencing from hormonal shifts. But the real metabolic advantage of lentils and whole grains isn't the micronutrients, it's the low glycemic index mechanics. The intact fiber in these foods slows glucose absorption at the intestinal level. Your blood sugar rises gradually instead of spiking. Your pancreas releases insulin in a measured response instead of flooding your system. This prevents the insulin resistance spiral. When your cells are repeatedly exposed to high insulin levels, they become desensitized. They stop responding. Your pancreas has to produce even more insulin to achieve the same effect. Eventually, your fasting glucose climbs, your inflammation markers rise, you're on the path to metabolic syndrome. Whole grains provide something else that's critical for your changing metabolism: B vitamin complex. These vitamins support the methylation pathways that process estrogen metabolites. When methylation is impaired, you accumulate more inflammatory forms of estrogen. This drives systemic inflammation that worsens insulin resistance. Brown rice, quinoa, and oats contain these B vitamins in their natural matrix. Refined grains have them stripped away during processing. You're left with pure starch that behaves metabolically like sugar. Now, the anti-nutrient paradox. Legumes contain phytic acid that can block mineral absorption. This is why some nutrition advice tells you to avoid beans entirely. But the research shows a simple solution. Soaking overnight neutralizes phytic acid while preserving the food matrix. The PREDICT studies confirm what matters most isn't macronutrient ratios, it's whole food structure. Two women can eat identical amounts of carbohydrates, but the one eating intact whole grains will have dramatically better postprandial responses than the one eating refined versions. Your action blueprint: half a cup of cooked lentils or beans daily, 2 to 3 servings of whole grains. That's roughly half a cup of cooked oats, quinoa, or brown rice per serving. Always pair these foods with fat or protein. This further blunts the glucose response. The fat slows gastric emptying. The protein triggers hormones that signal satiety and regulate blood sugar. When you eat a bowl of oatmeal alone, your glucose spikes. Add nuts and Greek yogurt, and that spike becomes a gentle rise. The meal timing principle here is distribution. Don't load all your whole grains and legumes at dinner. Spread them across your day. This maintains steady metabolic signaling. Your cells get consistent fuel. Your insulin levels stay stable. You avoid the energy crashes that come from irregular eating patterns. The mistake to avoid: healthy grain-based snacks that are ultra-processed. Granola bars, rice cakes, whole grain crackers. These products have been pulverized. The fiber matrix is broken. They spike your blood sugar like refined carbohydrates despite the whole grain label. The clinical context is clear. Your metabolism at 45 requires precision. The structure of your food determines how your cells respond. Intact fiber in whole grains and legumes provides the architectural framework your metabolism needs to function efficiently. The food matrix and precision metabolism matter more than generic eat healthy advice for women 35 and beyond. Your postmenopausal metabolism responds differently to the same foods. These 5 foods are selected for that specific biology. The clinical reality is your cells are rewriting their response patterns. Whole berries, dark leafy greens, fatty fish, Greek yogurt, and intact whole grains provide the structural and nutritional framework to support that transition. Start with one food pairing from this blueprint at your next meal. Subscribe for the next video on meal timing and the circadian metabolism advantage for hormonal health.